Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Rebecca. You can call me Becky. Some people call me Becky. I am a junior doctor. I live and work in Kent. I am training to be a GP. Hopefully, graduating as a GP in a year from now. Depending on how things go. And so that's the plan. And how I got involved with smoking cessation, I was championing a few programs and projects when I was working in East Kent. And yeah, had a lot of experience and contacts there and have still been working on these things. And very much of this line of promoting promoting health in a holistic way and in preventing the diseases and also reversing chronic illnesses in natural ways. And one of the most natural ways really is by avoiding putting certain pollutants, adding certain pollutants to our body. So I have a PowerPoint presentation to share with you tonight. And I wonder, before we start, I wonder if because I know on Zoom there are these reactions that people can do. I was wondering whether people could put their hands up, whether whether either you are, just because I would like to have an idea what sort of audience I'm talking to, whether you are a smoker yourself or you know somebody fairly close to you who smokes. Can I see the hands up for any people who are online at the moment from sort of okay, I see one thumbs up. And okay, I see. Oh, thanks guys for participating. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, great. So this might not be your most traditional kind of smoking cessation talk that you have heard before. I'll just get started, and then of course if anybody would like to interrupt me at any point, you can. When I'm sharing my screen, I won't see your faces, and so if you can shout out, or if you raise your hand to ask a question, I think I get notified and I'm able to see that as well. So that's another way of reaching me. But I'll stop halfway to check if we're still together. So let me just start sharing my screen now. Hopefully this will work. Let's see.
Yeah, we're good. We're fine with that, Rebecca. We can see that.
Okay, perfect. Great. Good. Thank you. All right. So, smoking cessation. Okay. Yeah, so there is a warning here because this is a different kind of approach. When I was learning, studying, and preparing, when I was involved with the smoking cessation team at previous hospitals where I worked, I came across a lot of new and special kind of material that I had not seen before. And so I do say, these lights have the potential of changing people's lives, and I would like people to realize that, because this message can be very powerful and can impact people's lives. And yeah, and so it is not taken lightly in a way. And so we all already know about sort of, today I don't want to be talking about all the bad things that can happen to your body if you smoke, because I think we've been hearing that story for so long, for really for hundreds of years. Really, we population of the world knows about this, and even in the cigarette packs it clearly says smoking kills. And so I think we know it does affect every single organ in our body, as this picture depicts, but I don't want to focus too much on that. And it can, yes, and it, because it is mainly really, it does, there are two things. If there's anything you want to think about smoking and how it impacts your body, I would say there are two sort of main problems that happen. First of all, it really increases chance of developing cancer significantly because of all the toxins that it has. And secondly, especially in the lung, because the lung is so fragile, you know, with all those really fragile tissues. And secondly would be because it actually, you need to think of it as a disease that affects vessels, all the vessels, blood vessels in your body, the arteries and veins, and essentially they supply blood to every single organ, isn't it? So actually it is a generalized problem in the body. It affects all the organs in our body. So a lot of times people just associate smoking and the lungs, but when in actual fact it affects from the moment it affects our arteries and capillaries, that means automatically it means it has the potential of affecting every single organ in our body. So that is one thing. Now, one thing I did want to highlight, which people do talk about, but I found this on one of the NHS websites, and I thought it was very helpful. Because there is, of course, another sort of negative consequence of smoking is the financial burden. And I don't know if sometimes some people like numbers and they like to put a number to things. And so, you know, if let's say there, as you can, like number one, so let's say that one pack of cigarettes normally has 20 cigarettes inside. And I'm told that Marlboro pack is about £11 a pack. Okay, so let's say a person who smokes a pack a day, which is kind of like the standard unit of smoking that we use worldwide, and it is quite a lot. So some people smoke less than that, half a pack a day, or some people smoke 2 packs a day. So let's say then if a person who smokes a pack a day of Marlboro, how much money do they spend? So you can see here how much per week, per month, and per year. So actually, if you stop smoking, you could be saving around £4,000 per year just on cigarettes. And so for some people that is quite impactful, especially there are people who are struggling financially and smoking and struggling with addictions, struggling with other areas of their lives. And so it puts things into perspective in a different way. So we're going to approach and look at smoking sort of from 2 different aspects and 2 different angles tonight. Okay, one of them is the physiology of smoking. What does that mean? That means, how does smoking affect my cells and the cells in my body and sort of my biology? How does smoking affect my biology? And the second one is the psychology of smoking, sort of how does smoking affect the way I think? How does it affect my mental health? How does it affect my brain from sort of like a mental, subconscious kind of level? Not only how the smoking affected, but what about my thoughts affected the smoking, if that makes sense? Because it is a sort of reciprocal thing, and one affects the other. So it's quite interesting. We'll have a look at that in the second part of this lecture. And again, please feel free to stop me if there are any issues. However, we will be taking questions at the end. So you're welcome to type them in the chat as we go along, or jot it down on a piece of paper if you have it next to you, however you prefer. Okay, so talking about now biology, anatomy of how some of these mechanisms work inside our body for us to understand really what's happening and what's going on inside. Smoking, actually, so we know that cigarettes contain nicotine, and this is a substance that stimulates our nerves, stimulates our brain cells, okay? And particularly, it targets what we call the reward center, which is roughly in this area where this red circle is showing, somewhere in the middle of our brain. And this is a place that connects what we call the limbic system and the frontal cortex. So the frontal cortex is really what you've got here behind your forehead, right here. And then limbic system is a bit sort of backwards, sort of not backwards, sort of towards the back of our brains. And so the reward center really sort of relays information and connects front and back of the brain, if you like to think of it that way. And then here, this is sort of like a diagram of how supposedly a nerve ending looks like when a nerve is connecting with another nerve, and how they actually how do they communicate. They don't really touch each other. However, this signal is still transmitted because there are little neurotransmitter or hormones, if you like, that they kind of are released and then absorbed. So from one end, they're released on one end and absorbed on the other end. So the nerves are never really touched, but it's just that they have that communication between them where substances are released. And so in particular, so nicotine actually, I don't want to get too technical into the actual science of it, but it's for us to understand a bit behind it. It stimulates something called acetylcholine receptors, neuroreceptors in our nerve cells inside our brain, okay? And it happens very quickly. Soon as, a person puts a cigarette to their mouth and they inhale, as soon as that really reaches their little alveoli inside their lungs, it really very quickly will reach the brain and cause that sense of pleasure through that reward center that we just saw in the previous slide. And so here we go. What happens? The nicotine, okay, it is inhaled, it goes into the lung. Once it reaches the lung, the air sac actually is in very close proximity to little blood vessels, okay? And so that nicotine travels from the smoke that is inside the air sac, it travels into the bloodstream through those small little tiny capillaries that are inside our lungs. And then once it's in the bloodstream, it will travel very quickly to the reward center in the brain. That causes endorphins and dopamine to be released, okay, in that reward center. And I think people might have heard of dopamine before. It's quite one of the most sort of popular neurotransmitters and hormones, if you like, in the brain. And so that's where that sense of pleasure comes from, okay, is because really of the dopamine that is released. And so there is good news that I have spoken to a lot of smokers and a lot of people who have tried for so many years quitting, and then they are successful and they relapse, and it's a struggle and a battle for many years. And so, and they say, oh, I'm hooked, I'm just addicted, that's it, I am a slave to it. But actually, nicotine, the withdrawal symptoms can be hard for quitting any kind of addiction, really. That's another thing I wanted to say up front, that even if you don't smoke or if you don't know smokers, this presentation here can be applied to many different kinds of addictions, whether it is addiction to sugar, coffee, alcohol, okay, or several different things, anything that has become part of us as a habit. Some of these principles we're going to talk about today can be very helpful. So it really is a sort of a flexible thing that can be applied in different settings, which I think is very useful. So actually, so whenever we try to take a substance out, remove that, something that the body was used to receiving over and over again, suddenly if you stop it, obviously the body will notice and it will feel something, will feel a difference, and it won't like it very much initially. So that's what we get, what we call the withdrawal symptoms, okay? For example, somebody withdrawing from nicotine, they might have headaches, they might have be in a really bad mood, their hunger levels will change, also their irritation, well, I said a bad mood, and there are some people who tremble, who can shake. There are several different things, but it depends, first of all, how dependent they were on that substance, for how long they were using and how much they were using. But generally, these symptoms would only last about a week. And so if you think about it, if you've been smoking for 20 years and you really would like to quit because you think that could really transform your life, it is possible that you might need to endure some discomfort and symptoms, withdrawal symptoms. However, science tells us, and it proves that that actually they will last about a week maximum. Those initial withdrawal symptoms from nicotine, and they don't always happen. And again, it is dose dependent. And so, what are some tips on how to succeed quitting tobacco and quitting smoking and possibly other kinds of addictions? There are a few tips, okay? Specifically talking about tobacco, there are the 3 Ds, okay? Deep breaths is first, dietary changes, and number 3 is decision, okay? These are key. These are gold. I know they seem so simple and so obvious to some of us, but actually, I will explain to you now exactly why these help and how and why they are beneficial to us. So deep breaths. Well, there are many reasons why. Well, basically, when we're breathing out, we already it's part of a detox that we're going through, because we are expelling that excess carbon dioxide that we've been inhaling for years through the cigarettes. When we're breathing in, we're obviously inhaling more oxygen, and so there is a way. What do we mean by deep breaths? Okay, it's not an obvious thing, and so actually, if you try it, once you try this, you will see that it does require intentionality, okay, to actually breathe in for 7 seconds, hold it in for 7, and expel for 7, okay, and repeat that at least 7 times, and then you do 3 lots throughout the day. Okay, but you can even do it more. Okay, so there are a few tips. Some smokers actually they find it helpful whenever they get the craving, they go and do this little exercise, or when they get anxious, when they get stressed, nervous, angry. These things actually do help, and I have seen actually people doing it very successfully, and they've tried it. They you wouldn't believe what it actually does. And so it does help, and yeah, every time you get a craving. And so that is one thing that is yes, because by doing that you're sending so many signals to your brain when you're breathing slowly, or slower. You are telling a lot of things to your brain, even if you don't believe it. If you're in a stressed situation right at that moment, and sometimes we start breathing really shallow and really quickly, and we don't even realize when we are tense, when we're worried, anxious. And even if you continue, you can remain worried and anxious, and those thoughts might still be in your brain. But if you force yourself to physically breathe deeper, breathe slower, you will notice and you will feel physical changes happening very quickly. And now, dietary changes. Right. Something that really, really improves. So you need to think about anyone trying to quit tobacco as somebody deciding to undergo a detox and purposely undergoing a detox. And the number one thing that's going to help you, a lot of oxygen supply and a lot of water supply, because as humans, we're made of more than 75% water is our body, really. And so we need to be supplying it with extra and excessive amounts of water during that time, actually, to support the cleansing. And so that's what we call actually hyperhydration. Okay, and you can use water, but you can also use fruits. Okay, and so some of the benefits, it will encourage the excretion of nicotine. It occupies the hands. Okay, so if instead, it's easier to tell the body, the brain prefers to hear, eat more strawberries rather than stop eating chips. Does that make sense? The brain loves positive things to do rather than think about things you need to stop. Because if you think about, don't think about the pink elephant in the room, what's the first thing you're going to be thinking about? You're going to be thinking about that pink elephant, obviously. But if you actually say, well, think about tigers, and so you suddenly shift your focus and you're thinking about something else. And so there is, when it comes to smoking, there is a physiological dependence on the nicotine specifically, but there are also habitual habitual addictions, let's say, you kind of, the body is actually used to, for example, bringing hand to mouth. That is one thing that stays. And some people, they even associate holding something in one hand, and then, you know, a lot of smokers say, you know, when they're holding an alcoholic drink in their hand, or holding a cup of coffee in their hand, they just feel like the other hand needs to be doing something. Sitting, chatting with friends, being outdoors, being inside, being in specific situations, being at parties, they just feel, our muscles, they have this really what we call muscle memory. And so there is that habit of fidgeting and then fiddling with your hands and wanting to do something. So instead of having that empty and nothing there to feel, you actually can occupy your hands with something else. And some people even take up crochet, painting, other kind of habits to replace this. And so another benefit, of course, of eating more fruits and vegetables would be to supply and replenish, you know, vitamin and good sugars, because those will help fight the craving when it comes to our biology. And so, yeah, what is the best way? Tea, sort of herbal teas, fruits and vegetables as well. We expect a person to be passing a lot more urine when they are undergoing these phases. And so that's why replenishing it with adequate oral intake of fluids will be very important. And having more urine to pass, because that's one of the main ways that the body will get rid of those toxins, will be through urine. And so that's another reason why. And so just to note that some people, they end up replacing one bad habit for another sometimes. So they would start drinking, and they would increase the coffee intake. They would go for processed foods, junk foods, chocolate, candy, or burgers and chips and soft drinks. And so be careful, because actually you wouldn't actually be quitting, the fact that your reward system and your dopamine is still firing in an unhealthy way. And that is one of the main things we want to get rid of when trying to quit smoking. And decision, very important, really. And we're going to come back to this later towards the second part of our lecture, if that's okay, because without this, none of this will take place, and none of this is possible at all. So this really is the main point right there. And so, yes, quitting any habit can leave emptiness. So we must find a replacement. I've already kind of spoken about this. So for example, here we have, a little analogy, okay, little example. We have a jug of water, all right? This jug is filled only halfway. And let's say water is healthy, okay? And so it's filled halfway only with water. So actually it is filled halfway, but there is space for other things to come in, okay? And so other things could be poured in. Whereas, for example, this jug here is filled to the brim with water, with healthy things. It is filled to the brim with healthy. Therefore, there is no space for unhealthy things to come in. And so that is, I don't know if people understand that, but basically the idea is a space always exists, okay? Our brain really catches on everything around us, catches on stimuli all around, all sorts of stimuli in our environment. And so the space always exists. The size of that space remains the same. Our job is to choose what to fill it with. Okay, so we can fill our brains with junk, or we can fill it with health. Okay, so in a way that these are two powers fighting against each other always, and they always will. They will forever, all the time, and every day, really. And so actually we have decisions that we can and should make at every second of our lives. And some people say that you are always one decision away from a completely different life. And it's true. If you think about it, from anything you say to people, you can always decide how to reply to others, what to behave. And we're always planning and thinking, deciding from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep on any given day. And so that is going back to, instead of focusing, thinking, oh, I've got to give this up, or, it's something I must stop, I must quit. No, actually, that terminology in itself is not a healthy, productive one. Instead, we can start saying, instead of saying this month I will quit smoking, you can say this month I will I will increase my health. This month I will improve my life. This month I will take up more new habits. This month I will take up more interesting habits and better habits, or something like this. And just focus on the good things that you're bringing rather than the bad things that where you're sort of losing or missing out on. Some people sometimes think of it that way. And so dopamine, this is a really, wow, this concept here, I can't emphasize it enough, because as we mentioned, we in our nervous system, our brains, our cells, what happens is that what in the end, really, nicotine, what is doing is supplying pleasure. Okay. And dopamine is that hormone of pleasure, one of the main ones that we're talking about specifically here. But there are lots of different ways of raising our dopamine levels. Okay. And there are healthier ways of doing so, that we can do it in a healthy way. Our bodies were created for this, and it is part of our natural original physiology. So it's not a bad thing. However, it has to be used correctly. And so, for example, this is just to depict, let's say this is a person having a cigarette, okay? So the vertical line is dopamine levels and the horizontal line is time passing, okay? So let's say a person has one cigarette and their dopamine level spikes very quickly and high. And then with time, it also slumps down. It sort of crashes pretty quickly. And then they have a feeling, oh, my dopamine levels are really low and I feel uncomfortable. So therefore, I need to go for the next cigarette. They have another cigarette and that spikes again very high and it just drops again really quickly. And then you carry on doing that. However, as you can see with time, actually, you're getting less of a spike each time, because the receptors in our brain, they get used to that, and they become less sensitive to that stimulus coming in, and therefore that's why you need a higher and higher dose of nicotine and higher amounts of cigarette with time, because it's not doing the same, is not quite doing it for the brain anymore in time, and so you're not really getting that pleasure anymore, that same initial pleasure. Okay. So what
Rebecca,
we would like to, yes, please.
Sorry, could I jump in there, Rebecca? And you might come on to answer this. It's very interesting that reducing impact. What kind of time scale would that happen over? Is that talking about months or years or decades that people are finding them dopamine levels dropping?
Well, yeah, so that depends on how much they're smoking. I don't have a definite specific answer for that.
Okay.
I can tell you from experience, from observation, we're talking about months.
Okay.
Sort of, if a person is consistently using the same amount for about 2 or 3 months, they will find it's not quite doing it anymore. But it depends on the context and what else is happening in that person's life at any given time as well, because a lot of people find that when they're going through a more stressful situation, also they increase their need for their amount of cigarette also goes up, and they just feel like they need more to supply more to the brain.
Yeah.
So I don't have a definite answer for that. I'm afraid.
That's really helpful.
From observation.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Thanks.
That's all right. So, the second graph, the graph on the right, this one is really ideally what we should all be aiming for, which is very achievable and can be done, is actually reaching healthy, steady levels of dopamine, where in time can even continue slightly rising slowly through healthy means. And what sort of things then, I wonder, what can we do? Which ways do people think? I mean, um, yeah, there are. I'll answer it, but there are. Because I know people might be participating in the chat, but I'm not. I cannot really see the things coming up.
Sorry.
Yes.
Do you think that replacing those things with exercise, maybe to get those levels?
That's a good idea. Yes, absolutely. That's one option, definitely. Because exercise also produces, thanks Tony for that. So it releases all those happy hormones, as people call it, and those good healthy endorphins, really. And so that is one healthy way of replacing it. And it doesn't sort of spike like that and then crash again. And if you do, and then for example, food, there are lots of food items, particularly plant-based items, that increase our dopamine levels naturally. Okay, and they also increase serotonin levels. A lot of the foods that increase serotonin levels, they also increase dopamine levels. Okay, and so some of them would be, so for example, cashew nuts, Brazil nuts, bananas, honey, dates, oats. There are lots of different things. Most of them are plant-based, and these again, they increase your levels, and they sort of they are steady, and they won't crash down very quickly and require you to quickly go for some more very, very rapidly. So here I've listed some examples. Sleeping, having good sleep. And so actually, if we're doing all those interventions at the same time every day, and if every day we are conscious of trying to do these things, purposely doing them, it will help us, and we will ensure that we are actually keeping up healthier, where our levels are topped up. And that's even when we're talking about, let's say, winter months, as we're experiencing now. We're experiencing winter. Some people's serotonin level drops in winter time, and then they will come to see us GPs to ask for a prescription. There are ways of us trying to monitor that ourselves and trying to prevent our hormones levels from dipping too low too quickly, and by some things that we can choose to do in our daily lives in terms of our habits. So I will probably, I'll just skip through this one, just because I want to get to some more important things. This is just a little regimen of water and just how much water, but as a rule of thumb, people should be having at least 2.5 liters well, at least. That's for people who are not trying to quit smoking. People who want to quit smoking, it would be about 3.5 liters. But again, that depends on your body weight. So I'm not going to prescribe. We can talk about it in the question and answers at the end if you like. But aim for an average of 3 liters of water a day. I think it's safe to say for most people, and people especially trying to quit toxins and then detox their body. And so here is, again, looking at the physiology of our body, because a lot of people have a fear. Either they have a fear of quitting, oh, what's going to happen to me? Or they think, it's not really, I don't really think it does make a lot of difference. Actually, first of all, I don't think it affects me that much. And secondly, if it does affect me a lot, it will take so many years for me to start seeing the first benefit that it's not even worth me even trying in the first place. Well, no, I would like to challenge that today, and I will show you now a little time scale here of what actually happens. So after you've had your last cigarette, 8 hours later, your nicotine levels and carbon monoxide, they reduce, okay, by more than half, and your oxygen level in your blood, they will return to normal. So 8 hours is a normal standard working shift. So let's say, in the morning, and by the time you finish work, if you haven't had any cigarette break, and if you haven't had any cigarette, actually your oxygen levels have returned to normal. And I think that's something to celebrate. 2 days later, carbon monoxide, which is the really unhealthy gas, unhealthy gas that is inside our blood vessels, that is eliminated completely. Okay, and your lungs start clearing up themselves. Okay. And also 2 days later, there is no more nicotine in the body. And that's what we were going back before when we said that normally the withdrawal symptoms from nicotine, they last only about a week if they take place. Okay. And then the person starts smelling, their ability of taste and smell improves as well 2 days later. 3 days later, a person can breathe better. Their tubes, their air pipes start relaxing, and their energy levels increase because they're now better oxygenated, and they have less of the toxic gas, and they have the healthy fresh oxygen. 2 to 12 weeks later, the circulation improves, which means that all your organs now are starting to become healthier because they're being supplied with adequate amounts of blood. And a year later, your risk of heart disease is halved. Okay, because I think a lot of people are aware, and we do associate smoking with heart attack, don't we? We know, I'm sure that we've heard of people suffering of a sudden heart attack, and they were, smoking a pack a day for years, and in about their mid 40s to early 50s, unfortunately they get taken to A&E with pain in their chest. Well, a year after quitting, you have halved. And I mean, if we carried on, if I continued showing you the benefits, sort of 3 years after quitting, 5 years after quitting, you wouldn't believe, your risks of developing lung disease drop significantly after a year as well. So it's quite remarkable. And so I'll just pause here. I think we will now move on to the second part, which arguably is the most interesting and most important part of this talk. And so I just would like to check in with people and see if we're all right, and if we're understanding, if we have any issues up to this point. I am happy to carry on with the psychology of smoking, which I think is even more exciting. Let me have, I think we'll take, so I see people posting some questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Gary, should we take these questions only at the end?
Yeah, we can just look. I think most of them are comments and observations. There was one when you were talking about people needing something in their hands, or not needing, but that psychological aspect of having something in their hands. In your opinion, do you think it's a good thing for someone to maybe have a fake cigarette or something that they're holding? Is that helpful, or is it kind of someone going down the same road that they're trying to get off in your experience?
Okay, so are we comparing like, for example, having a glass of water in my hand in comparison to a fake cigarette in my hand?
Yes, because I think you did explain to replace it with something positive, but I know that some people, and when I was trying to stop smoking, I would have something pretending that I would almost pretend that I was smoking, and I just found that was helpful for that action. But I don't know if I was helping myself in the long term. Should someone replace that totally and say, look, there's nothing to do with the cigarette in my hand? I know it's a bit of a difficult one to answer. Everyone's a bit different.
Yeah, it is a bit subjective, I would say. It depends on but it depends on whether that person is actually talking about a completely fake cigarette, or if they're talking about an e-cigarette. So we can touch and we can talk about e-cigarette at the end of this talk and talk about that, because obviously if it's a completely fake cigarette, it's healthier than the e-cigarette.
Yeah.
But what's even healthier still would be to actually just replace it with a different new habit, a better habit. So that would be my recommendation to try. Or some people find it helpful to hold a pen in their hands, or fiddle with a pen or a pencil. That can happen. So if that works for you, again, it just depends on each context and in each individual.
Yeah, that's what it was. It used to be a pen or something. But anyway, enough about me. There was another comment in there which someone had suggested when you were talking about some of the positive things which help lift the dopamine, was about friendships. Someone had suggested about friendships.
Brilliant.
How that can be a really positive way of us building those natural dopamine levels. Would you agree with that, Rebecca?
Definitely, yeah. Thank you, whoever raise that. That is another way that we can definitely improve our happy hormones and keep them topped up with a healthy, supportive circle of people. Yeah.
Excellent.
Definitely.
And the others, I think you might have mentioned, we've got getting enough sleep. We've got getting a massage for those who are able. Fantastic. Hydrotherapy. So those were just some of the comments that came out of the first part of the presentation.
Oh, great. Yeah, great. We could take the more questions at the end. So should I move on? I'll move on to the second part now. So psychology of smoking. Yes. So number one most important question when we're thinking about this: why did the person start smoking in the first place? Okay, that's very important. So normally somebody starts smoking because of imitation, actually, of an attitude. So I would like, if you're a smoker, or if you were a smoker, or if you know somebody who smokes, I would like to take you back to the time in your childhood or teenage year or adulthood when you started. Why did you start? What was the circumstance in your life that you found yourself in at the time? What kind of circle? What was your, what places were you attending? What kind of people were you hanging out with? Because in the end, really, it's not, in the end, we don't know about something until we see other people doing it, okay? And so that is how we kind of learn things as humans. So you may argue, well, I was like, maybe I was a one-year-old and when I first saw a cigarette, but I wouldn't have a recollection of that. Yeah, that's true. I mean, but I'm talking about when you were older and you actually came into contact with people around your age who were having that habit. So it is interesting that we imitate an attitude, okay? Then this attitude turns into a habit and the habit turns into servitude, okay? This is really important to understand what happens, and that a lot of us might have been subjected to this kind of cycle. So what is the only way though to overcome a habit is to replace it with another one, as we have already said. Instead of thinking about, oh, I need to quit, I need to stop this. No, think about, I need to start something else. And so what is the definition of servitude anyway? Not everyone is familiar. So it is defined as the state of being a slave or completely subject to someone or something more powerful. Okay. And so a lot of people do feel like, well, but I can't help myself. I just can't, I can't stop it. I can't help myself. It's stronger than me. Some people say this. And so, and the servitude in this case is threefold. So there is physiological servitude, which is what we spoke about first. There is a psychological servitude and habitual servitude, okay? And so physiological is, as we mentioned, that our cells, they get used to being constantly supplied with a certain kind of hormone, constantly at a certain kind of level, okay? And the psychological servitude is all about that whole pattern that you have developed inside you and what is actually going on in your brain while doing it. And so I just would like us to consider a few things when we're talking about the psychology of it and what happens inside us. So if we have an analogy of a sailboat, okay, and there are different aspects that we can think about when we decide in any kind of action that we take in our lives. There are different things. There is our will of doing things, okay? So the will here is compared to the rudder of the boat. So that actually kind of moves left and right, and it basically decides which direction. This is the ability of making a decision, okay, not the action itself. So that is the will. And so that means that I would like to make a decision, but that's not actually doing it yet. And so that's for us to contemplate and reflect on the fact that there are different steps to making this mental decision. So you might be willing to, but then you need to actually make the decision. and that is more what is propelling you forward, and that would be the motor. Let's say that would be that is the engine. And so our decisions, they must always be informed, they must be sincere, personal, realistic, and absolute. This is very important. Again, as I mentioned before, nothing else that we spoke about so far matters unless we get this down straight and unless we get this correctly. Okay, because people, there's a saying that says, a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. What does that mean? We need to internalize it. This is personal to you. I don't know what is your life. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know how your life is like and what this means to you. I don't know what is the habit that you're thinking about quitting, a habit that possibly has made you struggle, one that you dislike, one that is keeping you a slave. I don't know what you have in mind, or who, or perhaps it is somebody that you know and you would like to share this message with. But at the end, we all need to actually, it depends on what it means personally to us. Okay, and so there must be a reason why you're thinking about this. There must be a reason why you're attending this talk in the first place. Okay, there must be a reason why you think that cigarettes, I'm sure there are reasons why you believe cigarettes are harmful and are affecting your life in a negative way. And it is important that it is absolute, okay? So when something is absolute, it means actually gathering all of our energy, all of our forces into trying to get something done. And as we've mentioned, establish that it, we're not going to diminish this. It's not an easy thing. However, it is possible if we can use some of the information we received here tonight and take informed steps. And there are a few tips and tricks that we can do as well. And so there is, I know that you guys had last week was a talk about weight management, isn't it? And Rachel has written a book called Mind Over Desire, which is kind of stemming from this popular saying, mind over matter. So it is important to understand that actually our brain really is at the top of our body for a reason. It is sort of the chief, the boss that controls everything else. What we decide here actually affects and controls everything else. And whatever comes into our brain, all the input that comes in will affect it. So for example, okay, if I was standing in front of you and I cut a lemon, imagine I get a nice big ripe lemon and it's beautiful, it smells nice, and I cut it in half. And then I smell it and its juices are already leaking, and I suck on that lemon, okay? Some people, just by listening to this, they will already sort of feel, some people listening to this, and when, if I had a lemon here to show you and I did that, some people's saliva would start producing in excess, even though you haven't even touched the lemon yourself, okay? But you're watching me and you're listening to me handling this lemon and eating it myself. And so that this just demonstrates the power of our brain, the power of our mind, okay? Even though you didn't even come into close contact with a lemon at all, just by listening and seeing it, it stimulates something inside you, and suddenly your saliva starts overfiring, so that's just an example that actually we can make decisions, and we are empowered to do so. Okay, we can change our lives, we can transform our lives. There are so many benefits of quitting tobacco. I'm not going to read all of them, but these are some of our physiological improvements. If you're less tired, your breathing improves, as we mentioned, all of your organs improve, you reduce your chance of cancer, not to mention you have a brighter smile, and you improve your brain function significantly, because now your arteries won't be constricted, they won't be narrow, there will be adequate and better blood supply to your brain tissues, which means you have more oxygen and you'll be able to think clearer, think sharper. If you're thinking clearer and sharper, you can improve all areas of your life. You can improve your studies, your finances, your relationships. And so it really, in summary, all around better life, really. And so I'm just going to come down to a couple of questions now. We're nearly drawing to a close. And so a few questions that some people might raise. What about cutting down slowly? Okay, I've heard this a lot. Whenever I speak to patients and we come down to these sort of questions, whether you drink or smoke, I hear a lot of people saying, I'm cutting down. That's their answer, I'm cutting down. So a lot of people are currently cutting down, which sometimes it's an interesting way of putting it. So why not? Well, it is hard enough to quit a habit, but by doing this, you might be prolonging the suffering, actually. Not to mention it is actually less likely to lead to success. Okay, that is what research has found so far. And it is very possible to have a rebound effect later. And not to mention that the brain's dependency and the habits and hand gestures will continue. Okay, and so some people actually find it is easier, better, and more effective to go cold turkey, because actually if we were talking about alcohol, that's different, but we're talking here about nicotine and the withdrawal symptoms of nicotine. I've never heard of them being life-threatening, first of all, and second of all, they are short-lived, and as we mentioned, they will not last more than a week, okay, normally. But again, this does change from person to person. All right. And what about nicotine replacement? Some people might ask, is it okay to use it? Well, you can use it. However, nicotine is the addictive substance itself. Okay, it is what keeps you going back for more. And so it depends on what you're defining. What are you trying to quit, really? Are you trying to quit the servitude? Do you want to stop being a slave to something else that has been controlling you for a long time? Or perhaps not. Perhaps some people just want to quit tobacco and tar, So that, again, that is something for you to reflect by yourself and make that decision and ask that question. Is there a question? I don't know if somebody has okay, so the goal is to live free of all and any kind of cigarette. That would be ideal. That would be the best, okay, of any. But of course we understand that we're all subjected to habits, and as in life we do. That's why when I'm talking about this, I'm also mindful of non-smokers. We all probably having in our brain certain things that we would like to improve, change, and quit. And this talk can be applied to many of those aspects. And now this question is really a lot asked as well. So why does it feel like smoking helps me relax? Because if nicotine is that bad for me, then why does it make me feel great? And yeah. And so the thing that to understand is the craving for another cigarette, for the next cigarette, is what makes us feel irritable and anxious. Okay, the craving for the next one is what causes this feeling of unease inside of us. And these feelings can be temporarily relieved when we light up the next cigarette. Okay, and it's the effects of smoking itself that cause the anxiety in the first place. Does that make sense? So we are trying to become less irritable by smoking. However, we probably would have been not so irritable in the first place if it wasn't for the fact that we have subjected our bodies to an addiction. And so when the body cannot get what it has been used to, it starts freaking out a little bit, okay, for a while. And so what's the best way? Really, cutting down smoking will overall, then at the end of the day, will actually improve mood and reduce anxiety. A lot of people tell me, I can't quit because I'm too anxious. Just right now, I'm just going through a very stressful period in my life. moving houses, I'm going through a divorce, my children are in trouble. And so, you know, I just can't, you know, cigarette is the only thing that is relaxing me right now. And so cigarette will make me less anxious, and it will make me improve my mood. Well, unfortunately, no. The only reason why it is improving your mood is in comparison to where, so let's say that if your mood is here, that is you normally healthy without any kind of substance at all in your life. Your mood is a certain level right here. With the cigarette, it will. So because of the addiction, you've been addicted now for a while, then that your baseline mood reduces just naturally. That set point will reduce, and the only thing now be able to pick it back up would be if you continue refeeding it with that substance that you've become addicted to. And so just to finish off and to finalize, to close this session, to realize, I invite really all of us, all of you, to realize that the switch is inside you and only you can really do it. Okay, forget, you know, no matter how many times somebody tells you something or the amount of information you receive, in the end it needs to come from that decision within you. And in order to reach that and maintain a decision, it requires soul searching and really reflecting on your life, on your motives and your reasons and your desires, really, as to why do you think you are about to make this decision, and why is it that you want to do this in the first place. It can be done. And I think, yes, so just to recap very quickly, a little summary here, just to recap what we have said. The sense of anxiety relief is fake, okay? Because actually it was the smoke, it was a lack of cigarettes, which you got used to, that made you anxious in the first place. So we're now just trying to stabilize things. Nicotine will disappear from the body in 2 days. Drink water in abundance. Eat fruits in abundance. Practice your deep breaths. Drink water. And, you know, pick up these things every time a craving comes. Introduce new things and good things in your life to replace bad things. Keep your dopamine levels topped up in a healthy way, and we've already listed some examples. Remember, there will always be a gap. It will be taken up by something, whether it is good or bad. And so I invite us to proactively try to fill our lives with good things so that there is no space for bad things to come in. And remember that we are slaves of anything that controls us. And so what better time to quit than right now? Yeah. And so this is specifically for people who are currently smoking. If you're listening to this and you're smoking right now, you could take a leap. You could decide, and you could just look at that bin and feel that bin with whatever you want to get rid of. Throw those packs and those cigarettes in the bin and tell others that you're doing it. Inform and tell, shout it to the world and tell them that you've just decided to transform your life and do something amazing. Decline offers of those friends and the circle of people you walk around with. Tell them, no, thank you. I have decided to free myself from tobacco. Repeat that sentence and notice that this is a positive kind of sentence. You are freeing yourself from something. You're becoming stronger by yourself. Repeating it many times, your brain hears it, okay? Your brain will hear it and will really transform it. And the more you repeat it, the more the desire to smoke will reduce. Trust me on this one, believe me. I'll take you up on this. If it doesn't, you can email me and tell me later if that doesn't work. All right, and so that is our invitation to you tonight. And with that, I will open up to questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the presentation. Food for thought. And one thing that really has been coming across to me there is this, the power of the mind, how so much of one, the thing that might make us succumb to these addictions in the first place, but also what you've explained is something that will help us meet those challenges of those addictions. Also is about having the right decision, making the right determination, and then following that through. So excellent presentation. Right, we've got time for questions. So I've had a quick look through the chat. I don't think there are any fresh ones in the chat, but has anybody got any comments, observations, or questions that they want to ask Rebecca? Anything on this presentation? Any tips or hints? Anybody who's struggling with something, whether it's smoking or anything else? Would anybody like to ask a question or offer a comment? So that can be either you can unmute and ask or put something in the chat, whatever's easiest for yourself.
I have a question.
Okay, thank you, Judith.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that presentation. Amazing. My question is, so let's say I want to give up smoking. I've made the decision and I've told everybody, and I really like the last few slides, and it's probably, the question's probably answered in the last slide that you had, but what is the next practical step that I should do now that I've made this decision to quit smoking?
Okay, so if you have already, you mean if you threw the stuff away, you told people that you decided, and then what's next? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, what is the next thing that I should do? Because I really want to stop smoking. Let's just say I was in that position.
Yeah. So the next thing is get a pen and a paper and jot down the habits, the new habits you're introducing to your life, and what are you replacing the tobacco with. That is the next step, to get excited and start writing all the good things that you're going to start doing now instead, and focus on that. And yes, and those could be, and reminders. Some people will put reminders on, get little post-its around the house, reminding yourself to increase your amount of water, increase the amount of fruits that you eat. I've even known of some people, they make little cards for themselves. They keep it in their wallet, they keep it in their phone, all the places where they normally, the sort of trigger points in their house, in their bedside table, everywhere, and say, I have decided to free myself from tobacco. Or any sentence that works for you, a good sentence that you prefer. Spread those words around your house, around the place where you are. Start practicing, put those reminders. Sometimes we can help ourselves by, kind of trick our brains into doing certain things and adopting new habits. So yeah, it would be to focus on the new habits and the new things that you're introducing into your life now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Is there something about associations? I know that, as I think you'd suggested in your presentation, Rebecca, sometimes it's the environment that we're in often when we're starting smoking or any other habits that might be harming us. It's often the associations we're in. And I know that when I was trying to start smoking, it's been a long time now, 26 years ago I stopped smoking. But whenever I would go and kind of associate with others who were smoking, that was a real challenge. I might do well, I might have done well for a week or a couple of weeks, and then you get drawn back into a circle. Everyone's smoking around you, and then you start again. Now, the challenge here is obviously we can't cut off, and it's not probably healthy to cut off all of our associations, but any tips on how people might be able to manage that, understanding that the people they're around might not be helping, but obviously not wanting to completely do away with everybody?
Well, yeah, it depends, it depends on who those people are, how close you are to them. And then also depends what kind of places you're meeting with those people. And so if it is a person that means a lot to you, is a person that is your family member, you meet them indoors, inside, and, then that's one thing. But if it is an acquaintance that is not even really your friend and you only meet them at the club, that's a different thing. And so you might feel like you can comfortably you might feel like you could try and reduce your associations with the acquaintance. And so it is, again, it is quite a personal question that you could, but it definitely is a great thing. It also depends, how much do you really want to quit? If you really want, some people will go at lengths they would do anything to free themselves from a type of addiction. And so some people will really go far, and take this really far. And so it's a tough one, because as we said, cutting down slowly is harder than going cold turkey when it comes to nicotine. That's the truth. And so it depends on how easy you want to make things for yourself, and what is your life situation at the moment, where you find yourself. But I would recommend to try and avoid places where it would try and avoid your triggers. Definitely trying to avoid triggers is a huge integral part of quitting any kind of habit. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, we've got a couple of questions coming in the chat, but before we do, we're just going to have a quick explanation of something we've been doing in our sessions, just in case anyone's got to leave early. And we have actually got a prize. Unfortunately, we've only got one prize this week. We've been giving away a prize in our various sessions, but we have a wonderful prize, which is to help somebody to relax. I think in your presentation, Rebecca, you were talking about some strategies and some of the things that can help us with our dopamine levels that are more constructive. And in order to assist somebody, whether it's just the general stresses of life or they're helping to challenge an addiction that they might have, we have some wonderful prizes. Well, this prize is a massage tool. I understand, a hand massage tool. Can you see that there? Looks like a little motor car, but I'm not the best at this, but I understand you can be using this. It's in a bag, so don't worry, whoever's going to get this, it's protected in a bag. So you'll be able to use this massage tool on your backs, your shoulders. You can use it yourself, or you could be asking someone else to use it with you. So it's a wonderful thing made of wood. You've even got different types. I sound like someone on the QVC channel now, I think, but you've got one here with ribs on there, one with knobbles on there. So we have this prize, but in addition to that, we also have, I don't know if you can see this on the screen, an assortment of scented candles. So candles that people can be having in your home when you're having a nice hot bath, in your kitchen, whatever you wanted to do. So we also have these scented candles which are there to help relax you. Now, we did draw a name from random, from those who are participating, and I am happy to say that Monica Smith, you are today's winner. So Monica, you will have this winging its way to you, and also the scented candles. I'm not sure, are you still online, Monica? If you could, I don't know if you want to say hello, or you just want to put a thumbs up just to make sure that you're still online.
I'm still online. Still online.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Is that okay, Monica? Would that be okay to get this prize to you?
That's fabulous. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. You want my address?
Yes. What I'm going to suggest is, if you can message me, I don't know if you are able to go onto the chat, and if you want to message me directly and give my phone number, or I'll put my phone number to you, and if you could get in touch with me, give me a text with your address and or contact details, and we'll aim to get these to you in the next couple of days. Are you in? Where are you, Monica? What part of the world?
In Birmingham.
Okay, good. That's a help. We had someone from the Caribbean, I think it was last week, and I better just qualify. I would love to get there, and that might not be as easy. So congratulations. Right, let's go back to a couple of points. I think we had one, bear with me, right, which was about support groups. Okay. Namsa, thank you very much for your question. It is, are there any support groups you can recommend for someone who actually wants to quit?
So there is, if you go on Google and you type 1U, they have a lot of resources on smoking cessation, and it is quite good. They have a good website, and they kind of work with the NHS as well. They have a lot of good advice, good resources, and you can also you can ask, well, Public Health England has excellent resources too. And everyone can contact their local GP and ask to be referred for their local smoking cessation service, which is absolutely free of charge, and normally consists about it's about half an hour. It's like a 1 hour session per week for 6 weeks in a row, and that is sort of there. It's a full kind of smoking. It's kind of like a counseling, and so you speak to a counselor who is specialized on this for an hour per week for free, and they provide you with a lot of information, support, a lot of resources as well, and free things, and it's all through. So yes, there are, in terms of support group, if you through One EU Kent, they do have online forums where people support each other. So thanks, Nomsa, for your question.
I'm just going to put those, thank you for that response. And thank you for your question, Namsa, and your response. So Rebecca, I'm just going to put it in the chat. So it's called what? One?
I can type it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so it's called One U. And then also you have, public.
Okay. So just as Rebecca is typing those will be in the chat. So Namsa, hopefully that's answered your question, and those responses will be in the chat. So we do have another one. Robert, thank you very much for your comments. Just going down. I'm not the quickest on this, right? So Robert saying, keep the habit 2 years strong. What is the strongest defense to rebuke the return? So am I hearing, Robert, that you've been 2 years since you start smoking? Absolutely fantastic. Congratulations. But what is the defense about it coming back, that desire to smoke again? What has tried to pull me back is lockdown, family issues, and yes, smoking with friends. Okay, so if I'm hearing that right, Robert, you've been stopped smoking for 2 years, have done very, very well. Massive congratulations. But since lockdown, maybe some issues, I think, as Rebecca said, maybe sometimes when we're stressed about certain points, we want to go back and we think that the smoking is going to help us with that. And people around you smoking, are there any tips to try and keep yourself on that straight and narrow? I think that's what you're asking, Robert. So Rebecca, if you're here, we also have, and I don't want to put him on the spot, I did put him on the spot last week. We also have our presenter from the first session, Dr. Kevin Stewart. Welcome, Dr. Stewart. So I don't know if Rebecca, first of all, and Dr. Stewart, or Dr. Jude, if we actually have 3 doctors online for those who are listening. So if any of you guys want to come up with any positive comments. Yep,
yeah,
sorry.
for Dr. Nomsa is also.
Okay, 4, thank you. So Nomsa as well. So we've got a wealth of knowledge here. So maybe we could just break for all 4 of you, if you're willing and able, to give a bit of input to Robert's question.
Robert, thank you for your question and participation. Basically, I would, thank you for sharing that. And it is, it's nice to hear people being honest and open, because you're probably just verbalizing what a lot of people are thinking, and what a lot of other people go through as well. And so it's, again, I don't know your life, but one of the, just repeating some of the tips we spoke about would be trying to shift your focus into other things, perhaps. And so let's say lockdown, a lot of people have, let's say we have more time around, we have more time to look around, we've sort of, doing less things. And so can we do within our homes, inside our house, can we do any healthy things around? Can we adopt new habits and new good habits? Are there things, it's a brainstorming, and whatever works for you, really. But again, if you do some of these things that we've been speaking about, you can help your own body physiology. So if you put your body in a state and help it to detox certain toxins, believe it or not, actually in time, in a few weeks down the line, your body will start craving for these things less, and it will even enjoy them less once you have sort of done and gone through part of the detox, and your body will actually crave for those things less, if that makes sense. So it is If you haven't tried it yet, I would recommend trying that hyperhydration technique, the deep inspiration technique, and to really double up on the amount of fruits. It will significantly help as well. You're muted, Gary.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I was just saying you don't need to, but Namsa, Judith, or Kevin, can you add anything? Would you like to add anything to those points Rebecca has made? Not putting you on the spot, but kind of I am. So is there anything else that can be added to?
I think this is Kevin here.
Hi, Kevin.
Yeah, I think that was really, really well done, really well said. I think to add would be just like you were honest with us, it's finding a group of friends that you can trust, a support network that you can be honest with that would support you through tough times. You know, having that community around you is really, really helpful as well. So that's all I can add.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. So positive people around you, people who maybe have been on a similar journey and got through that journey, or others who are just going to be there to give you that advice, guidance, support, someone to talk to, someone to give you that positive distraction as well. Maybe, I mean, let's face it, lockdown really isn't helping, as I think I've just seen it in the chat. The whole escape is different for all of us, but someone who might want to join you off for a walk, or doing something that's going to divert the attention from slipping back. So thank you. Okay, Judith, were you going to come in very quickly?
Yeah, I was. Two things. Number one, I would say is with some people who have done work on addictive behaviors, so obviously smoking is one of them, is perhaps trying to actually stop multiple of the addictive behaviors that will be associated with your smoking at the same time. So, for example, one person may do the nicotine fix and the caffeine fix together, as we talked about the cup of tea or the cup of coffee and the cigarette. It might be an idea to just quit them at the same time, so that this whole addictive behavior is tackled together to give you that freedom in a much more stronger way. So that's one thing. The second thing that I would say is pamper yourself. Now, I know blokes don't do this very much because it's not like manly or whatever, but you know, having that time to relax is really important. I was just looking at the information from the Mayo Clinic this week, and it was talking about ways of battling smoking addictions, and one of the messages that came through was relaxation, relaxation, relaxation. And maybe you need to get your own aromatherapy candles, maybe you need to go for a hydrotherapy or massage therapy, you know, getting into healthy foods that give that pleasure, but they're not causing the destruction. Look after yourself, owe it to yourself to get enough sleep, to get that fresh air, to go on a walk, to, you know, enjoy time with your family and friends. Well, I know it's difficult during lockdown, but really go the extra mile to look after yourself and do healthful, fun things, you know, that will help you to feel good, because this will also help combat the addiction. And for anyone that's out there, you know, receiving that, I think Rachel spoke about it a little bit last week when it came to overcoming the addiction to food and other addictions. She was talking about looking outside of yourself for that help, trusting in a higher being, higher power, God. All these types of things are going to help you to overcome addiction and help all of us to overcome whatever addictions we have.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Judith. Namsa, I'm going to give you a pass on this one, but maybe call you one at a future time. Rebecca, were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't raising. I was just agreeing with what you said. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, right. We've got a minute or two before we close the session. So, any final points, final observations that anybody would like to make? Just got the last minute or two. It's been a fantastic presentation, and I think taken from a perspective that I haven't heard before, Rebecca, of us really thinking about how we can use so much the change of mindset. You know, I think sometimes we can really beat ourselves up when we say, look, I can't do this, I can't do this. As I said, it's not about necessarily my personal experience, but I tried to stop smoking for probably a year or a year and a half when I tried many times before, but I hadn't made that real commitment to say, okay, this is it now, you know. And even when I had made that commitment, it still took me a year to actually stop smoking. But I think the one thing that I did recognize is that there was no point beating myself up. If there was a stumble along the way, it was about trying to dust that self back off and saying, okay, I'm making that commitment that I want this out of my life. I want to beat this. So I'm going to get back on the horse, so to speak, and I'm going to try and go again. And you know, by the grace of God, it worked, you know. And what I'm saying, what can be done for me, it can be for others. So we can overcome these things. That's not easier said than done, but let's not get in the mindset that we can't beat. We can beat. So we have, I'm just putting in the chat here, our YouTube channel, which is Inspired Steps CIC. So this evening's excellent presentation will be uploaded within a few days. We've had our first session, which was by Dr. Kevin Stewart on diabetes, prevention and control. We then had our second presentation, which was about managing weight, which was delivered by Rachel Hanley. We still have another session to squeeze in. Dr. Judith Antwi is going to be delivering a session at some stage. We've got have to reconsider it, reconsider the dates, and that is actually going to be about how to naturally boost our immune system to help fight viruses, COVID-19, colds, flus, various diseases by actually boosting our immune system. So look out for that. That will be coming online very soon, as well as hopefully in the new year, we'll be looking at sessions on mental health and well-being and other principles on how to be healthy during whatever time of our life. It's never too late for us to consider our health and making these positive steps to improve our health. So Rebecca, thank you so much again. It's been a wonderful presentation. Is there a last comment or point you want to make before we close?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here with you guys, and I really appreciate your story, Gary. Thank you for sharing that. That's very encouraging. And you know, congrats. It's brilliant, and that's, yeah, thank you so much. That is really powerful. Thanks for sharing that, and thank you for this opportunity.
No problem at all. So again, thank you all for joining us this evening. Please look out for future events by Inspired Steps and the colleagues around us. If anybody wants to speak to anybody individually, if you're looking at the videos and you wouldn't mind further information, then please get in touch with us. Our contact details again are on our YouTube channel. They would have been on the flyers and posters that many of you would have seen. Please get in touch with us, and we can then try and get you in touch with any of the doctors or the presenters that are part of this series or future series that we will hopefully be running very, very soon. So we would wish you a good night. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you all very soon. If we don't speak beforehand, have a great festive season. Best wishes for the new year, and let's hope we all have a productive 2021 and a healthy 2021. So best wishes in the meantime. Okay, thanks and good night.
Good night.